Okay, so I was gonna do a nice little introduction and, explain and make it really nice and everything, but you didn't come here for that, you came here for solutions. So, like I said before, if you're going to actually solve the world and take it seriously, you're gonna have to do these mathematical equations and you're gonna need the data. So, this is very important. All the data that's not actually made, someone actually needs to go out and get this data out, okay? You need to know how many people exist on this earth. You need to know how many people are old, how many people are young, how many people are educated, how many people aren't educated, where there's populations of education, where there isn't. Now, if you already have this data, you're probably wondering what to do with it. Well, imagine it like this, okay? It's like a kaleidoscope, but also like a puzzle piece, because people need to be near people who actually inspire them and are going to teach them and give them the necessary training in order to succeed. Now, why do you think when people come to a certain city, they thrive? Well, it's because naturally they're being trained, they're being educated, they have access to resources, things like this. Now, if you put them out in the desert, right, they're not going to thrive as much. So instead of just simply, taking a whole bunch of money into another city and then traveling and bringing all these people, why in the world aren't large cities expanding their outreach on trying to improve their areas? So if you have a large, big metropolitan city, okay, and 10 kilometers away you have a lot of poverty, this city should be focusing their efforts there, for sure, instead of sending it halfway across the world. Now, if for whatever reason they have enough money to send it halfway across the world and help their own community, that's really great. But the amount of resources and it takes in order to have that transported and to maintain that contact between people, it's very difficult. Now, how well do you think someone's going to be trained and educated if they live with someone, right? Now, if for whatever reason I have a student who lives halfway across the city and they can only come on Mondays, if you compare both students, who do you think is going to do better? It's going to be the person who lives with me, right? So it's very, very, very important. Proximity matters. So this needs to be taken seriously. Also, proximity matters is because you trust people who you know. If the person is in your community and they have some sort of, you know what I mean, consequences to their actions, they're not going to act recklessly because they live in that community. So, like I said, proximity matters. Knowing the math, having the data, and putting the pieces together. Okay? Now, you could literally put the whole world into a mathematical equation, just like they did before, in which there was xb equals c, in which there's fixed numbers, there's fixed amount of people, there's fixed amount of calories that's needed, and there's fixed amount of actual food that's needed as well. There's a certain fixed amount of time in which it needs to be grown. There's a fixed amount of area in which it needs in order to be made. Yes, there's things that are made around this every day that are invented, like hydraulics, like different inventions all the time, and this helps for sure. And it may alter the math, but we also need to know how much people have in order to pay for these inventions. That's also going to affect the math as well. Like I said, you could put the whole world into a mathematical equation. However, if you don't have the variables and the information necessary to do so, you cannot do these equations. So we need the data. We need the data accessible to people who actually want to find solutions, and we need it to be known to people so they can make informed decisions. So if someone knows there's not going to be a bunch of jobs in a certain area, do you think that they're going to be going for those jobs and being trained on them and educated? No. However, they would know that if the information was accessible, explicit, and available to the public, and real, factual evidence, and that is reviewed by people that are trusted. Now, we have a slew of information all over the internet, but are those the actual numbers? We need to have a platform in which people can trust, people that know that that's the data, and it's readily available to them. But it also needs to be easy to access. You shouldn't be going through 1,000 different portals, and it should be fun too. You can make it on a simple app, you can make it on a website that's fun, you can make it even into a game that's educational. You need to reach these people because they're not going to be reached themselves. Or maybe it needs to be mandatory. Maybe you need to know how many people are dying in the world. Maybe you need to know that. Maybe that's a mandatory educational thing in which we need to be educated in our schools. Maybe there needs to be a class on it. What's the state of the world? So all of these things need to be thought about, addressed, and actually being done.